Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is part 2 of the Chords of Dream Theater. And I did do a Chordplay episode based around Dream Theater early on this channel, before I really had proper lighting. I didn't even really have the Chordplay, flow or format together back then. So it's early, and it's dark and shadowy, and I'm talking a whole bunch, which I do talk a lot. Sorry about that, whatever. But Dream Theater is very, very important, and I did find them at a very, influential and inspiring time in my career. I was a student in Atlanta at AIM, and Images and Words kind of hit, and MTV was playing Pull Me Under. I heard it on MTV, I went out and bought the album, and I was just blown away. So back in the day, I was a huge Dream Theater fan. I'm still a Dream Theater fan. It's not like I stopped being one. It's just back in the 90s, I was obsessed, and I went out and bought all of these, like the songbooks and transcription books. And this is really my favorite era, of the band, that the early days, up until around, Scenes from a Memory. And I saw them on the Images and Words tour, when I was a student back in 93. I saw them again in 2000 on the Scenes from a Memory tour. And I also saw Petrucci play with Satriani and Paul Gilbert for the G3 that was in Nashville at the Ryman. So I've been following, John Petrucci for a very, very long time. Instructional videos, Guitar World columns, the transcription books, the albums, touring. I've been reading, interviews with him and all sorts of stuff for a very long time. The opening, that was Strange Deja Vu from Scenes from a Memory, and it has these very, interesting kind of stretch chord voicings, which Petrucci does that a lot. And I definitely noticed and kind of tapped into some of those, stretch fingerings and voicings, and we're going to look at those in this lesson quite a bit. But it's something like this. Right here, this is basically an A flat 5, but he's grabbing, an octave there, and then the fifth is E flat is kind of hiding way up there, and then it goes to an A flat flat 5, and there's also this kind of change, in the rhythmic, syncopation. So it's like groups of 4 the first time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to that A flat flat 5 and then do it 3 times and then 4 times. And then he starts doing this, which is basically an A flat flat 5 again. So there's, the open E, A flat, and then that D note right there. And then go up, basically, a half step, and then there's A flat 5. And technically that would be an E double flat if you want to actually think of that A flat. I know you don't really want to think of that, but A flat already has an E flat right there, so that would technically be an E double flat, which is really bizarre. Go back to the the A flat 5 and then the A flat flat 5. And then take everything you just did and move it down to F right here, and then you're going to have an F5 and then an F flat 5. kind of slowed it down just a little bit, but you know, it's an interesting stretchy maneuver there with those chords. It's definitely a great workout for your pinky too. You know, really unusual and so cool. Now, speaking of stretchy chords, look no further than Pull Me Under, you know, arguably their biggest hit. And this is the pre-chorus, and you can find a whole bunch of these kind of stretched out chord voicings. You know, and I love that section right there. So there's like an E minor add 9 right here. And then a C sus2 sharp 11 right here. And we actually talked about that in part 1 of the Chords of Dream Theater. You know, it's the Lydian chord. But he's doing that. And he's basically just playing with the most dissonant part of that chord. And that minor second right there. So it starts with the E minor add 9. And then it moves back here. This is basically like an C sharp minor, but he's also playing with the sus2 right there, that D sharp. And then a G sus2, and then a B add 11. Which I love those two chords back to back. It's right on the edge, you know, kind of keeping you, you know, that intensity and that kind of dissonant sound, but I love that flavor. For another sample of these stretchy chords, you can stick with the same song, just focus on a different section. This is the Interlude to Pull Me Under, right before the main guitar solo, this part. And I love that little 4-chord, you know, progression. There's an E minor add 9 again, and then an E minor add 9 add 11, and then an E minor 6/9, and then there's that C sus2 sharp 11 again, and the Lydian chord. But one more time there. Light and airy, and kind of has this like floating out in space kind of quality. I love those chords. Let's check out the song Voices from Awake, which is one of my favorite Dream Theater songs. And this would be, I think it's like the bridge. I think Voices is like, you know, 9 or 10 minutes long. So I don't know how many verses, choruses, bridges, interludes, and solo. I mean, there's a lot going on in that tune. But it's this part. Fan of chords like that, you know, where you have fretted notes surrounded by droning, you know, ringing open strings. I love that. So there's A sus2 right here, and then you're going to move back to this, and that's going to function as A9, and then move that G back to F sharp right there, and you're going to have an A6/9. You're going to move back to this, and that's going to be an A minor, an A minor add 9 flat 13, and then you're going to move that C back to a B, and then it's just an A sus2 flat 13. You know, really unusual, but I love that. This is from Trial of Tears, from Falling into Infinity, and this is really just after the kind of dreamlike, you know, kind of slow intro, and then you hear John playing this. Comes in when, you know, John Mayone comes in on bass, and you hear Mike Portnoy, come in on drums, you definitely hear that little guitar part change, and it's the root note or the bass note that's kind of changing. He's kind of playing with the major and minor, or I'm sorry, the relative major and minor. So right there, he's doing this. And if you play that over E flat, which is technically, kind of playing with E flat minor 7, kind of. It's like an E flat minor 6, technically, and then E flat minor 7. But all of that, has that E flat, bass note, a root note. Changes to the relative major, and that's going to be G flat. Same chords right here, but it has a different sound, with that relative major bass note. So it's interesting to hear how that part changes with just that change in the bass note. The last example takes place during Take the Time, and this is technically during the keyboard solo. So I know, when you're listening to Dream Theater and you hear Petrucci play, it's guitar solos and riffs and licks and fills and all this stuff happening is a major distraction. But then sometimes you really need to pay attention to what he's doing behind keyboard solos, or like if there's a bass interlude, or, like sometimes John throws in some of the coolest things, even when it's not his time, to solo or his turn in the spotlight. And I think that's a, kind of a trait he picked up from Steve Morse, because Steve Morse used to do the exact same thing, with the Dixie Dregs and with Deep Purple and some other groups too. But, Steve would shine like the sun when it was his solo or his turn. And then he would do all these wicked and amazing things behind a violin or a key solo or something else. And Petrucci, has a habit of doing that too. But it's this part. It basically starts with this C sharp minor 7, like that. And he's really just taking the top part of that C sharp minor 7, sliding that up a whole step, and then he's moving to an F sharp 9 right there. And then on that F sharp 9, do the same thing, kind of slide that top part up, a whole step. And then you're going to move to this, that's an E sus2. And then move everything down a set of strings, and then a B sus2. Alright, that's going to wrap part 2 of the Chords of Dream Theater. And honestly, you could take one of those guitar, transcription books I flashed earlier. You could study one of those for a year, and find all sorts of cool licks and, runs and chords and chord progressions and fills and all this stuff going on. I mean, definitely John Petrucci is a mountain of, prog rock and prog metal, and there's all this stuff going on, whether it's classically influenced or classic rock, classic prog, metal. You put all that in a blender and stir it up, and it's like, man, that sounds really good. And definitely I'm a huge fan of his music and his ideas and his approach. I've always thought his really exciting and kind of fresh, and never stale. You know, he doesn't do any kind of cliche things. It's like he's always pushed himself, for, greatness. And that's awesome and very inspiring too. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.